I assume you all know my name.
It's from the advertiser, Stephen Spencer.
Oh, good. You answered the question. Okay. I first got involved with psychic stuff, metaphysical stuff in the mid to late 70s. Okay. I'm going to be painfully honest for a change about some of the stuff I don't actually claim back to myself. I usually don't like talking about me. Okay. But way back at that stage, I was about 18 and a half, someone informed us of the haunted house. Okay. A chap I knew, Gary, who used to work at the Night Owl on Milton Road. Does anybody remember Milton Night Owl? Yeah? Do you remember Gary? He was a little chubby sort of character. Anyway.
Sorry, Gary, if you're listening.
He was a character. What I didn't know about Gary was he was a natural trance medium. So anyway, as soon as he heard that there was this haunted house, he said, let's go. So we went there, nobody was living in the place, etc., etc. And there was a number of experiences we had. One that really sticks in my head. Now, Gary was not an athlete. He had a nice little beer gut back in that stage. Remember, have you seen pictures from the 70s? Nobody had little tummies except people drank too much. But anyway, one time he went into a trance and a spirit came through him who was a Japanese warrior. Okay. Now at the time I was into martial arts. I was into judo big time. Anyway, the samurai challenged me to hit him in the stomach, and I thought, oh my God, Gary's going to be in trouble here. So I lined him up, thump as hard as I could. My hand crumpled in his stomach. The warrior told me that what he did was he tightened each and every muscle in Gary's stomach. And I thought, okay, let's try this again. I had quite a good open hand punch. So I lined him up, got my feet together, etc. Thumped him. He moved back 3 or 4 inches. That's how much pressure was applied. Gary did not even flinch. That's a true story. Now, as time went on, I went to the Spiritualist Church in Brisbane. Most of you probably know of the Spiritualist Church. Okay. I spent about a year around Boundary Street Spiritualist Church, and then the best thing I got from that was that I should meditate. So I did. I did a lot. At times I would meditate, go into a meditation, and there was one particular day, it was like 3 in the afternoon on a summer's day. When I came out of it, my eyes were still closed, and I thought to myself, oh, okay, I haven't been meditating very long. The light was so bright around me. I opened my eyes, it was 7 o'clock at night, or 8 o'clock at night, and it was pitch black in the room I was in. There was a number of experiences like that. I went to a circle back in that first year. Everybody know what a circle is?
No.
Okay. Sitting in the circle, there's brilliant light. I could only see with my eyes closed, brilliant light, brilliant light. At the end of the circle, someone, or several of the mediums at the time said, wow, there was a beam of light across the top of you. I was in the middle of it, I could only see the light. They saw the beam. Like I said, the best thing I got out of that first year was to go meditate, which I did. Somebody asked me in the last 12 months who was my spiritual teacher. I had to, when I was thinking about, nobody's been my spiritual teacher. I've meditated, I've had these experiences, etc. That's what I find. Now, before we did the radio program the other week, or month, or etc., what's his name, Clive?
Seafood.
Seafood?
Yeah.
Okay.
You mean my co-host?
Yes.
Yes, Seafood, on the Strange Encounters radio show.
The first thing, and I don't think was recorded, was, why do you not think you could suffer schizophrenia? Which is a relevant question. Who has had a reading? Who's had readings? Who's had readings that were crap? Okay. It's a relevant question. The only answer I think I gave him was 2 months experience. Okay. I've seen things, had things happen, etc. Okay. Go back to those early days. By the time I was about 19, I was out of work for a while and I decided to join the Air Force. Vic loves this story. Okay. Guess what my nickname in the Air Force was? Spooks. Anyway, one night the guy said, "Can you do something?" And I went, "Yeah, well, let's create a circle." So it's chairs rather like these ones. So we created a circle, we're sitting there, and one guy off to the side of me was going, "Prove it! Prove it! Prove it!" I could hear that, and then the chair felt, I was rocking. I remember thinking, am I doing this or somebody else doing this? Okay. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground. All these guys were around me. When I opened my eyes, the guy who was saying prove it wasn't in the room. And I thought, that's odd. He's left the room. 3 or 4 weeks later, which was the last day we were going in different directions at that point. He comes over to me and goes, "You remember that night we sat in a circle?" And I said, "Yes." "You remember you fell off the chair?" "Yes." "Remember all the guys went around you?" "Yes." "The chair followed me around the room." And he said, "Did you know you didn't notice I wasn't there?" And he said, "I went to the pub." Okay.
Good stiff drink. Fixes everything.
Yeah. Hopefully it was a good spirit. I've been trying to do that joke for a while. Yeah, a couple more years I'll do it again. Be careful what you ask for. Okay. I left the Air Force. I was still meditating like you wouldn't believe, etc.
Can I ask what you were doing in the Air Force?
I was going to be an Air Force Defence Guard. The problem I had when I came back to Amberley was that my head could not associate the idea of killing. Okay. And I went, no, this is not for me. Okay. So I got out, again, like I said, I was meditating, etc. Around that time too, I did yoga for a few years, which I'd recommend to anybody young to take it up. It's a brilliant thing to do, especially if you stay out of the religious side of it. Around about 22, 23, I was going back to the Spiritualist Church, and a lady called Maureen Chichester, I think the last name is, had a church down in Redcliffe and invited me to do her platform. So I did.
And that means, to those who don't know what that means?
A platform is pretty much like this, where you have the host or the minister, and then you have the clairvoyant. And the clairvoyant usually does an address, and then clairvoyance in the second part. Okay. Which again can be very boring if the clairvoyant is garbage. Okay. Oh, I can see someone's head nodding up and down. Okay. And then for about the next 35 years, I was on Sundays doing spiritualist churches. In the early days, was every second Sunday I'd be at one church or another, and in that stage there was quite a few spiritualist churches around. There was more then than there is now, which doesn't say much for spiritualism, to be honest. Okay. A number of interesting experiences happening with it. Spiritualism, as most of you would probably know, is the idea, fundamental idea that we live past this physical form. Okay. And it's the attempt to prove that point. Okay. The dominant first experience that comes out of my mind was actually down at Redcliffe. There was a spirit, a woman in spirit approached me. Okay. and informed me there was a death associated with somebody in the audience directly in front of me, and I identified who the person was. And the lady in the audience said yes, and then I said, it was a woman, assuming that the spirit person who was talking to me wasn't one that passed over, and a woman in front of me said, in the audience said, no, it was, and I said, it's a man. And then the woman in spirit described the man, and then said that she was the wife who died first. Okay. What I'm getting to the point with is a reading or spirit communication needs to have something relevant to it, relevant proof. Now, even now, if I do a reading, I want relative proof for me too. Okay. I don't want to be sitting here talking shit. Okay. Or telling you need to be more positive thinking. You've seen that, haven't you? Yeah. Well, go on YouTube and listen to it dozen speakers like that. Too easy to find.
Can I ask you a question before you go on? For those who don't understand, I don't completely understand. What's the difference between a psychic, clairvoyant, and medium?
Okay.
And what would you classify yourself as?
A listener.
Okay.
Okay. Fundamentally, I'm a listener. And if you ask me, all I'm really doing is listening. The true interpretation of a medium probably has much more to do with trance mediumship. Okay. And not the so-called trance mediumship that I've seen more recently. Okay. A true trance medium is someone who... Bill Ryan. Anybody heard of Bill Ryan? No? 26 years ago, Bill Ryan was around. Okay. I won't tell you that story, but how he first got into spiritualism was he went to a circle in England. He sat there. As far as he was concerned, he went to sleep. For the next half hour, a spirit person spoke through him, uninterrupted by his thinking. Now that's a true trance medium. Okay. Whatever I've done in that sort of direction would probably be, in my mind, more like overshadowing, where I get very quiet, etc., and I listen to every word and I just start repeating every word I'm hearing. Okay. The weakness in that, and here I'm saying there's a weakness in that, is my mind can still potentially interfere. And the trick with this is to try and get your mind out of the game. Okay. And that's the key point. And that's one of the problems where you come across trendy stages in things like spiritualism or other groups, etc., that there's a group thinking and you should, I'm speaking about love. You're all my brothers and sisters, etc. That's sweet and nice, okay, but it doesn't tell you anything. I sat in a group many years ago. Remember her, Elena and Una, Vic? Lovely, a couple of individuals. In the 4 or 6 weeks I was sitting in that group, I had a entity talking through me who just regarded him or herself as we who are one. Okay, never gave any other name. The way, I'll go and call him him at this point, the way he would indicate he was first there, he'd pick up a pillow, aim it at Helena, throw it at Helena, so it'd hit her on the chest and then down onto her lap. And that's the way he did it every week. Okay. One of the later sessions with that, there was an older woman sitting on my side, and he suddenly turns to her and says, I didn't know you had a son in spirit. And it was one of the first things I ever heard him say that he didn't know. And she said, I was just thinking about my son. And he then said, hang on, I'll find him. Second two later, he started acting as the medium between the son and the mother. What impressed me was after the session, she came up to me and she said, I've been connected with spiritualism for 20 years. This is the night I believed. Okay.
Can I ask you a question about physical trance mediumship? I think it is, where people actually things manifest from it. I saw someone on the was a guest at the Wallachia Development Group down south somewhere, and he was actually like small stones were just pouring out of it.
Apports,
yeah. And I thought, is he a good regurgitator, or is this, you know, because you've got to think about these sorts of things. Because people could do that in magic acts, right?
Yeah. Well,
so,
who's heard of Sai Baba?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
Sai Baba used to do that.
Yeah.
He used to pull up a handkerchief and then pull out a stone.
Yeah.
Sleight of hand.
Yeah, but this guy, I can't remember his name, but they had like a sheet there, and they were just coming out like, I'm talking a bucket load.
Yeah.
Load of stones.
Yeah. It's a good question. I wasn't there, so I can't probably answer
but
that.
those, have you seen those things? And
No. I have seen things move occasionally, like the chair thing. I didn't see that. This guy said, I can only take from what he said to me. I have seen things from time to time float across the room quickly. I had one occasion where the house I used to work in Auckland Flower, behind the client, the door started to rattle, and my client turned around and like that, and then I squarely looked her in the eyes and said, "That's the washing machine out the back vibrating."
Yeah.
What's the message in that? You know.
Yeah.
Apports. It depends what you want.
Those two.
Jeannie Kane, who was a minister of the Spiritual Church, she said from time to time she had that happen, and they didn't come out of the mouth. They fell. Fell from the roof, etc.
Yeah.
This is not quite the same, but again, when I was in Auckland Flower, one night I decided I was going to go down and get an ice cream and something to drink from the shop, which was down at Auckland Flower. And I thought, which is the worst thing I can do. Okay, I shouldn't eat chocolate, I shouldn't eat that sort of stuff at night. Asked my wife. Okay. So I went and looked for my motorbike keys. Couldn't find them where I thought they were, which were they always were next to the telephone on my appointment book. So I decided to tear the house apart. My mother came out, she decided to tear the place apart, etc., etc. All through. We just went nuts looking for these keys. And after about an hour I said, bugger this, I'm going to get my spare keys. So I went and got my spare keys, went down, got the ice cream, the chocolate, etc. Didn't sleep, had 3 hours sleep. When I woke up, I walked out to where the appointment book was, and guess what? There's my keys. And my mother and I pulled that desk apart. Okay. Not quite the same. I didn't see it happen, but that happened.
Yeah, people have those experiences where some things appear, disappear, reappear. Yeah.
Same as numbers, which is not the same as a physical thing. But physical mediumship can also cover things like table tapping and that sort of stuff, etc. Which is one of the things I think spiritualism needs to get back to. Okay, where you have a table, you put your hands on it, and you meditate, etc., etc., and the table lifts, vibrates, etc., etc. I actually haven't seen that occur, but many years ago I was talking to the daughters of the Cummins family. They used to run the Waddigal Lodge down at West End. They now, Doris Cummins, and she started the Waddigal Lodge up at Maloney. When the daughters were quite young, her parents and friends used to sit around the table, and it was quite a big table. I actually saw the table, it was quite a heavy table. And the daughters said to me, as grown-ups, but as children, one night they thought they'd sneak in and have a look across the floor. They opened the door, and there's the table off the ground.
What's the purpose of that, do you think? Is that just like a demonstration that from spirit of something?
Oh, I think you need to ask the spirit person doing it, actually.
Yeah.
I couldn't be sure. I'd love to see that happen.
Yeah, me too.
And if Vic and I often thought about having a circle at our house, etc. But you know, even now I've got a 26-year-old daughter in the house who, etc., etc. And the house is not quite suited to running a circle. Okay.
You come over here and do it if you like.
Sorry?
You come over here and do it if you like. We got a little table especially bought for it.
Yeah, well, you need to have like Saturday afternoon or something like that, etc. But you need to have consistency.
Yes.
That's one of the things with that sort of phenomena. That you pretty much have to have the same time, same place.
Do you have to have this always the same people?
Yes, because it changes the vibe.
Yeah.
And I hate using the word vibe, but it does seem to be true. I find that with clients who come and see me. It's like I said, I want to see a reading go well. So if it doesn't go as well as I like, I get a bit shitty. Okay. But it's as much to do with what the client brings into the room. Okay. What vibe, what thought, etc., etc. Is that meaning that a skeptic comes in and it wouldn't work? Well, the answer to that is can still work. Okay. Because I've had a skeptic come in, and I didn't realise he was a skeptic, and he apparently wrote an article for a newspaper in Western Australia about me. Okay. Which I never got to read. He could have sent me a copy. And he was a straightforward skeptic. Okay. So it's what you bring into the room.
So it's you, the person, and spirit.
Yes.
And if the ingredients are right, it's good.
Yes.
And if the ingredients are not right,
occasionally the ingredients are wrong for some reason.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can work that out, what it is, and other times I can't. I had a day last year where I had 3 clients. The first one was brilliant. The second one was, she sat down and went, I've got nothing, I've got nothing, I've got nothing. Third one, I was terrified of because I had nothing with the second one. The third one was I had to laugh. It was just brilliant. Okay. So what was specifically wrong with number 2?
yes. And on that point, sorry.
I don't think there was anything wrong. I think you were being very truthful. And every reading must be a good reading for that reason.
Yeah. It's wrong is the wrong word.
Yeah.
Okay. It just wasn't going to be for that person on that particular day. And I've had that many years ago where I had done a reading for a woman. She came back, second time there was nothing, and I said to her, look, go away, come back in a month's time, we'll see what's happened. Okay. In that month she got separated from her husband and there was a death. I always assumed that was the separation from the husband. That was the problem from how I was doing the reading. So, because if I had talked about it, which was a complete surprise to her that the separation was going to happen, I could have got blamed for something. Okay. There may have been some other reason as well.
I've been asked a question often, which is, why do some people in spirit communicate to the living, and other people don't get that? What's your take on that?
There's multiple reasons. You can throw out one excuse or etc. for it. Just because someone dies doesn't necessarily mean they're a good communicator. If you're a shitty communicator in life, you're more likely to be a shitty communicator when you die, especially in the first period of time. It's also true, it seems to be true from what I can see, just because someone dies, they don't immediately become enlightened, okay, where some people do. Okay, and others could be over there for 10 years, 20 years, and still be as thick as a brick. Okay, so and
that reminds me of someone who came and spoke at our meeting in the early days, and they said they'd gone to have a reading because they had 8 deaths around them in 2 years.
Yep.
He had the reading with Deb Webber, I think. Webber?
I've heard the name. Yes.
And his father was a real bee in life, and the communication through Deb that was coming through, and he said to her, well, you're still a bee in the afterlife too. So, yeah.
Oh, my mum said that.
Yeah.
We went down to Logue, and one of the few times my mum came with me to one of the spiritual churches, and my father came through. And on the way home, she said, he was a bastard when he was alive, he's still a bastard now.
Yeah.
But how else would even if he wasn't being a bastard, if he was suddenly sweet and adorable, etc., my mum and I are not related.
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so there's that component too. It's also true, I've had, I did a session many years ago, I was still in my 20s, where, remember the old tapes? Okay. I started talking about this woman's, I think, mother-in-law. And I think I called her a witch, etc., which is not a terminology I think I've used very often. She phoned me up the next day, she said, when you did the taping, the only part that didn't tape was when you started talking about my mother-in-law. That whole bit was not there. But as soon as you stopped talking about her, it came back. Which is the other thing interesting about tapes versus CDs. I had a number of people over the years when I used tapes come back and tell me there was other voices on the tape. Now the machine I used was only for doing readings and wasn't for recording anything else or music, anything. Okay. I haven't had anyone come back since I started using CDs.
That's interesting.
Yeah, and you would think CDs would be more sensitive.
No, different technology.
Yes.
It's the EM side of it, the electromagnetic.
Quite possible.
Which is what you have on tape, which you don't have on CD.
Yeah. Which throws me into one of the things that can block a reading. Nurofen. If you ever want to do a reading, don't take Nurofen. That will block me really well. Okay. Panadol, I can take that. But Nurofen, even the rub-on stuff, that seems to have an effect as well. And I was talking to Gladys Mackay, which some of you might know.
She's spoken here.
And I said that to her, and she said, "Oh, that's because there's such and such chemical in it."
It's codeine, is it
I don't think it was codeine. It was something else that she said.
right? Yeah.
Okay. And it doesn't matter. I said, I will use it if I don't have any bookings. And I prefer not to use it because of the negative effect on your heart as well. So, your question.
Oh, I've got so many. I'm just thinking that they're all over because you're filling in the gaps. But have you ever had a spirit touch you?
Yes.
What happened? What were the after effects? No, just tell us what happened.
It has happened a few times, not a lot. Okay. The most dominant one was up in Canossa nursing home. Okay. My mother had strokes and ended up being in care basically for 8+ years. Okay. Absolutely horrible time in my life. In the last 4 years, she had a stroke and took away pretty much everything. Okay. The only thing she could do was lift one hand out, which at one time she went like that across the throat. Okay. And I went, I can't do that, Mum. Okay. Anyway, in the last month or two, I went up there, and if she was asleep, I wouldn't wake her up. Okay. I just wouldn't, because if she was asleep, she wasn't experiencing anything. I was hoping. Okay. So this particular day, I decided, well, I might as well meditate at the end of the bed, and she wakes up, she doesn't. I'm sitting there, eyes closed, breathing away. I know,
That's
sorry.
forceful.
No, it was like this.
Oh, okay.
Okay, it was like that. Okay, it was warm, it was tactile, totally physically experiential. Opened my eyes, nobody was there. Okay. Another time, which had happened, was more like the grab on the arm. We went through quite a financially challenging stage, and I'm sitting meditating, and a hand grabs me, and then the thing went through my head, everything will be okay. I could feel the pressure, the whole bit of that. Okay. And I went, who was that? So anyway, I couldn't work it out, and so I was meditating away. Anyway, the next day, it must have been a Sunday, because we went to Boundary Street Spiritualist Church, and Tony Wood, I was going to say Wynn, God, that goes back 40 years too. He comes out and mentions the name, which was Mum's friend who died before Mum. Okay. And sure enough, about 12 months later, there was some financial relief that occurred. Okay. I think it was less than 12 months. So yes, I've been touched a few times. Okay. Yeah.
Is the experience of receiving information, or how is it, from the deceased different to receiving information for the living?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and well, I meant to say, well, how is it different?
How am I hearing it?
Well, how is the information different? Like, or is it just you're still, because you said you're a listener, it's just receiving information?
Well, it's basically receiving the information,
yeah, okay.
and listening to it. What I like is anything different.
Yeah.
Okay. And that can be sometimes real things that you wouldn't expect. A few weeks ago, before this female client turned up, repetitively in my head was Alice in Wonderland, Alice in Wonderland, Alice in Wonderland, Alice in Wonderland. I never read that book. Didn't like the movies. The last movie that came out I didn't go to see, etc. So to me that was a ridiculous thing. Sit down in front of her and I say, I know this is ridiculous, but all I'm hearing is Alice in Wonderland. And a big smile came across her face. I read the book all the time, I love the story. Clear cut proof. Okay. As simple as that.
Yeah,
okay?
yeah.
Sometimes a single word that you don't expect. Okay. I had a client, I think his name was John. It doesn't matter anyway. It was a simple name like John, Peter, etc. He was due to turn up. As I was walking down my hallway, I kept going, I want to call him Peter. I want to call him Peter. But his name's John. I want to call him Peter. And I sat down and I said, look, I know your name's John, but I want to call you Peter. Tears. His father died a couple of months earlier. His name's Peter.
Oh my goodness.
That's clear-cut proof stuff of survival past this physical form. Regardless of anything else you get out of readings, like are you going to win the lotto or etc. etc. Us surviving past this physical form is the predominant sort of idea. Okay. And from my standpoint, most of the information of people who passed over, their experiences over there are good. Okay. Can I say they're all good? Maybe not, I can't say that. I went up to Des Newman House at Ladley. Have everybody come across Des Newman House at Ladley?
No.
This now goes back 30 plus years, at least. I went up there to do readings, 2-level building. The downstairs part was the first day I did the readings, and upstairs you had bang, crash all day. And it must be a builder up there. And so at the end of the day, I asked the workers in the building, is there a building? No, that's the in-house spirit. And I went, okay. Next day I went upstairs. And downstairs you heard bang, crash, bang, crash. The story goes that it was a German chap in World War II. Remember in World War II they grabbed all the Germans here and put them into camps, etc. He committed suicide in Des Newman House. And from that standpoint, but he didn't like me. Okay. So no, it doesn't necessarily mean that all people, when you die, that everybody will go to the happy place. Okay. I usually say if you are depressed and you die because you're depressed, that depression may still be with you as soon as you pass over. Contradictory to that is my mother-in-law. My mother-in-law had dementia. Really confusing disease situation. Dorothy passed away. I volunteered to go up to the room and clear out the room of all her stuff. There's 2 pictures on the wall, roundish type pictures. I didn't know they were nursing homes or Dorothy's. So I had to make a fuss and find out. They turned out to be Dorothy's. We went to Boundary Street Spiritualist Church because Glenys Mackay was on. I do have a fair bit of respect for Glenys Mackay's ability, especially in the past. I'm not sure at this point I don't know, being 80 or whatever has a positive or negative effect, right? Anyway, Glenys brings, from the platform, brings up my mother-in-law, which is fair enough. Nobody in that building knew my mother-in-law had died. Okay. Afterwards, because Glenys likes us, comes over downstairs and has coffee and continues and brings up these pictures. So 2 days after my mother-in-law had passed away, or 1 day even, she knew I was in the room she had been. So in one sense, her dementia was gone within 1 day. Which is hopeful for a lot of us, because I reckon a lot of us are going to have dementia. Okay. So with 1 day, they can be clear. Okay. Why is it that some don't go to the happy place? That would have to be very individual while that occurs, which it's too generalised for me to know, and I haven't come across enough of them. Sorry, one story leads to another, doesn't it? Okay. I was asked again many years ago to do readings in a house out at past Calvin Grove. I went to this house, I did 3-4 readings, and then I did the reading for the person who lived in the house, a lady. In the reading I said, oh, there's a lady spirit here, an elderly lady who used to live here, and she's still sort of here, isn't she? And the woman said, yes, I'm fully aware of her, etc. And she's quite nice though, isn't she? Yeah, etc. And I said to the live one, oh, she's not supposed to be here, she's supposed to be somewhere else. Would you like me to help move her on? And she said, oh, okay, yes. So I did a basic white lighting technique. Everybody know what white lighting is? Okay. And so it's encouraged this deceased elderly woman to go into the light, etc., which was really easy. She just took to it really well. Get a phone call a week later from the lady living in the house and said, you know that elderly woman who passed away who used to be here? I miss her!
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she was so much of a presence in the house.
Yeah.
So
That's amazing.
no. So, that's gone to no story.
Time for a question. You're sort of moving around in these circles, I'm guessing.
Used to, yeah.
Used to, yeah. Well, yeah. Have you ever noticed any sort of something about people who are psychic, clairvoyant mediums, something about their personality or their psychology that sort of makes them different from ordinary people? Is there such a thing? But you know what I mean.
I'd have to say no. Like at the beginning, probably we've all had bad readings, and we've probably had more bad readings than we have had good ones. Okay. There's a chap around at the moment who I can identify with to a fair degree. He's in his early 40s. A chappie called Darren Archer. Okay. Heard of Darren? No. He only does the spiritual churches. He won't do group things. He won't go out of his comfort zone, which is fair enough. The last time we saw him at a church situation, he failed. Okay. Other times I've seen him and he's been quite amazing. Okay. But he has similarly one characteristic which is similar to mine: fear of failure. Okay. Is there any specific thing? There's certainly people who are naturally born with the ability, who from word go have spirit experiences. Glenys Mackay is one. She has talked about having those experiences when she was a kid and even being put down for having those experiences.
And she also had a near-death experience as a child too.
Yeah. I think the other day when I was talking to her, I think she brought that up actually.
Because people who have near-death experiences or other types of experiences, they can sort of spontaneously develop those abilities.
Yes, some brain injuries.
Yeah.
Seem to will trigger that.
Yeah.
You'd have to think some people who've been on drugs will have a pure psychic experience. I think the statistics back in the 80s that 1 in 4 people had a paranormal experience in their life. Okay. I had a male client come to see me. Near the end of, I used to use a little hand recorder. Okay, it was about that long. I had it set for an hour. Okay, do you remember those sort of little hand ones?
Yeah,
Okay.
taking it.
Had it set for the hour. I was doing the session, getting close to the end of the session, and I suddenly look at him and go, "What's this about 53?" And he says, "Oh, 53, that number keeps coming up in my life all the time. It's everywhere, etc." Oh, and he just carried on, over the top. I looked down the recorder. It had stopped. Guess what it stopped on?
53.
No. 53 minutes, 53 seconds. Okay. Now, the other thing, we're on to numbers. This happened recently. I did a client who had recently contacted me through Facebook. Had done the session. The following day was her birthday. It comes up on Facebook. It was her birthday. Now, it never came up in the reading. So I got shitty, didn't I? I said, "Why didn't you buggers tell me it was her birthday? That would have been interesting. That would have been good, you know, etc., etc. It's always a good thing, etc." The next day, I have a female client in front of me, and I say, "Oh, there's a birthday around you," and she says, "Yes, it was my brother's birthday yesterday." "Oh, okay. He was 25. "Oh, okay. I see 27. I can see 20. You said his birthday was 25. They showed me 27. She pulls up her sleeve. In big black print on her arm was 27. Her sister and herself was born on the same day, which was the 27th. That's what I mean as proof. Okay, proof that someone's watching, who knows what's going on, etc. There's no way I could have known there was a 27, and it had no way I would, even if I'd seen it, been able to relate that back to a birthday. Okay, it's like the 53. Another coincidental thing. As some of you might have realised, my wife's name's Vicky. Vic had been married before to Tom. Tom was killed. When we moved in the house we are now, which was predicted that we would move into River Hills, I might add, by a lady called Van James. Our neighbour, guess what her name was? Vicky. She had been married to a Tom and divorced a Tom. The coincidental effect. Okay, that seems to be involved in life. Which also still comes in that, destiny versus free will sort of thing. Okay. Now, enough room for another story? A longer story?
Absolutely.
Yeah, they're good stuff.
One that my wife hates me talking about.
Then why do you do it?
I'm going to try and cut it down because it is quite a long story. Okay. But a woman came to see me about just over 27 years ago now. And in the session I said there would be a death in the family if not your partner, it's a strong male. It was enough information for her to identify who it was. She had 2 sons, one which you could never call at the time as being strong because of the stuff he used to, and all the other stuff. Okay. And the other one, whose name was Tom. Okay. She went up and got Tom and his fiancée and up to the Paddington Hotel and said about what was said in the reading, and Tom went, "Oh, a whole lot of, that stuff." Okay. I was polite then. He was killed 2 months later on a motorbike. So he was the strong one in the session. Okay. His mother came back to see me, I think it was 3 days after he died, maybe 4. It's a long time ago, I can't remember the exact timing. She gave me one hard time. Tom came up through the reading and said a whole lot of things about himself, which she basically said wasn't true, which reminded me of that part. I'll come back to that. His sister came and had a session 2 straight after the mother. In the session, there was a couple of things said. One was, who is this girl with blue eyes? I could fall in love with her. She could do with a meditation course. I recognised his sister took a liking to me. I didn't take a liking to her. Okay, not at all. Anyway, a week or so later, I get a phone call. Do you know anyone who can run a meditation course? And I went, yeah, relaxation centre in the city, Raja Yoga down in Milton Road, etc., etc. And I named her, and she just kept saying no, no, no. Remember, she liked me. Okay. And then she finally said, oh, can you do it? And I went, oh, okay, I can do it. I don't like running courses. Okay. Now, it was arranged, and it was like 5, 6 people, whatever it was. I remember turning up there in a pair of denim jeans, white t-shirt and a black leather coat that I had. Remember, this is like only like less than 6 weeks after this Tom had died. I felt guilty the whole night because I was staring at this woman with blue eyes, and I thought everybody could see me. Okay. Anyway, I wasn't really in the mood to get involved with you horrible creatures. Okay. Yeah, you know, had enough. So I wasn't looking for a relationship from anyone. Anyway, finished the course, etc. Who's heard of Finhorn?
Yes.
Okay. I had a game that came from Finhorn called, oh God, what's it called?
Transformation.
Sorry?
Transformation.
Transformation, yes. Thank you. Okay. Anyway, I had decided that these couple of girls would be just friends, etc., etc. I wasn't thinking in any sort of framework, especially seeing the one with blue eye was pregnant, and she was the one who'd lost the Tom. Okay. Anyway, I pull out the game, and those who know how to play the game, you have to have a focus point, right? Okay. So I went, okay, you have to have a focus point, or you can have it about money, or you can have it about relationships. As soon as I said relationships, names start popping through my head. And one name popped in my head, and as it popped in my head, it felt like someone hit me there, and I went, Vicky! And everybody looked at me. There's Vicky back there.
Who really doesn't like this story at all. She's not smiling.
Less than a week later, she invited me out on what we call the first date, which get my hair cut because she's a barber. She wanted to see what I look like with top haircut.
On that point,
yeah, she's a good barber. Yes.
that too. But on that point about synchronicity, coincidence, and all that sort of stuff, and does spirit lead people to other people, not only in life, but to have readings? Like, are people guided to you?
Yes.
To have a reading for a particular reason?
Sometimes, yes.
Yeah.
It's funny how some people get my card. One woman got my card as they were flying out to Europe. She was sitting next to someone who had a reading off me and said, oh, I'd love to have a reading off him. Oh, here's his card. She was taking my card overseas. So that card went all the way out of Europe, and when she came back, she came and had a reading. Okay.
So what's the significance of that? Is it because the information can come through you for that person?
I don't remember the reading, to be honest, so I don't remember.
But generally speaking, would you say?
Good question.
Like, I've got this idea of this spirit here and these two people on a chessboard, and you two need to go to talk to each other so we can get through. You know, that sort of idea.
Well, it's interesting how some people, like I said, get my card. People, there was a lady the other week, she said, she decided she wanted to have a reading, and she turned on her phone and it brought up maps, and my name came up, Stephen Spencer Clairvoyant. And she went, oh, I was just thinking of that. It's a little bit like the day before you phoned. You went through my head. That's why I'm here. If it hadn't gone through my head, I would have thought even 3 times before coming here. Okay. So there was that sort of connection was made through that. Was it because you were thinking about asking me, or was it because Spirit was influencing me?
Yeah, that's what the question is about. Is spirit influence? Yeah.
Either way, I'm not really sure.
Because I don't have readings. And just to give you the background, was it 2 weeks ago what we interviewed you, or a month was it?
Yeah,
my radio show co-host and I interviewed Stephen for the radio show, and since then I've sort of got it in my head, I have to have a reading with Stephen, I have to have a reading, like this sort of thing, and I don't have readings, but that, I don't know what it was, there was some sort of prompt from something to do that.
Okay. Well,
and there's my own influence, own reasons too.
Then the question you should be asking after you've had the reading, was it useful?
Yes, that's right. And I shall be reporting back to everyone.
Shit. Oh my God.
I'll tell you next month.
I have a rule with, if anyone makes an issue out of the recording onto a CD, will it record, etc. I make sure they record also on their phone, because more than likely the CD will play up. Okay, that's one of my rules. You know, if anyone makes any questions about the cassette, the only other thing I'd suggest before you have a reading, don't go out of your way to upset the reader. I was around about 45.
Yeah, I gotta get that, Stephen.
I was around 45, and this woman comes in, takes one look at me, and she says, "You're not old enough to do this."
Oh.
Okay. At that point, I had already been doing readings for 20 odd years. Okay. But that's not a way to start reading. Or in the case of the gentleman sitting in front of me, and I looked at him and I looked at him and go, your name doesn't fit you. And he said, that's because that's not my name. I only use that name to book the reading. And I thought to myself, why are you lying to me if you want me to give you the truth?
Interesting.
Yeah. So, people will do stupid things like that. It's not helpful. I don't specifically think that's helpful for a reading. Okay.
Some studies show that there's a link between childhood trauma and people with who have these abilities. Have you found that, or can you relate to it, or?
Oh, maybe in a minor way. I'm dyslexic.
Yeah.
And being dyslexic was once described as a conflict between the left and right hemisphere of your brain. So, people who develop I knew a girl who was blind as a bat, but I remember driving home and she could tell me where we were on the right way home because the wind that was blowing around the bent signpost. Okay, her hearing had developed to that level. She could tell how the wind was blowing around the signpost. And I nearly fell off the chair because she was totally blind. Totally blind. Okay. So possibly my mother's second cousin, who was a doctor down in Sheryl, I went to see him for some problem at one stage, and he said to me, "Oh, and what do you do for a living, Stephen?" And I took a breath, and I said, "I'm a clairvoyant." Oh, he said, "I sort of knew that. Don't know how, but did you know there was a second cousin who was regarded as a witch, and there was another one who was regarded as a seer? So there could be a family connection to it as well."
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's no, if you like, clinical proof of that.
Well, there was a question I was asked during the week was, are some people born with these abilities, and can you develop them? Can you
Well, if you consider the number of development courses, groups, etc., there's very few decent clairvoyants. So the trick with meditation, though, in my mind, is whatever level that you may have with it, you may enhance it. And if it's weak, it's probably still going to be weak. But if it's really strong, then it's going to be strong. And yes, some people are clearly born with the ability. Okay. Some clearly seem to get it more if they've had a brain injury, etc., etc. So yeah, there's that component.
It does
too.
seem to be that trigger with people. If they have an experience, like we're talking, just use near-death experiences as an example, where that can really make them, that can really heighten that in a very, they're sort of hothoused because of that experience, you know. And it's a bit like in shamanism, the shamans who are the most powerful said that the ones who are struck by lightning and live, they have that it sort of triggers all those faculties.
Yeah, if you consider in the brain, and this goes back to the neurofilm thing, if there's a part of the brain that is for some reason being open to it, then it's just going to be there. Okay. Even though in many ways I regard when I got sort of into this was sort of 18 and a half, there were still experiences before that that I could associate now as being a psychic experience. At that point there was this experience, like the cork experience. Remember what my age is. Remember back in the 60s, 70s, all wine came with a cork in the top. And if you can imagine the pressure that was on the cork. But I can remember as a kid having experiences, feeling like I was the cork, that I was somehow too big for the container I was physically in. Okay, hence I called it the cork experience. The people I used to see at the corner of my eye, and no, they're not there. So I ran around the corner to see if there was anybody there. They weren't there. Why did I say that? Okay. Yeah. Let's go the other way with that. The bypass that goes on the Eka. We were driving through there one day and I saw a person up on the road above. And I went, oh shit, what's somebody doing up there? They're going to get run over. And then I got a little bit further. Hang on, did I see a person? Right. So the next time I went through, it was a signpost, it wasn't a person. So the brain can do those tricks on you as well. So, you know, like I said before a session, I will go through what I'm feeling, what the thoughts are going through my head, especially if they are not really my normal thoughts. I will track thoughts in my given day. Ice cream. I just thought of ice cream. I suddenly tracked it. My daughter had ice cream this morning for breakfast. Okay, that's where the thought came from. Okay, I immediately tracked it back to that. So if I have a thought that I can't track back, I'm more likely to think that could be a clairvoyant thought. Okay, unless it's completely and utterly stupid. Okay, at night when I go to bed, frequently I see faces, and these faces don't mean anything. They frequently don't mean anything to any client that comes the next day. Okay. But they are faces. Are they spirit people, or is it some sort of misfiring on my brain? And yet these faces I've never seen before. Okay. Other times I've seen a face and went, oh hang on, that's something more different than that. And the next day the first client come in and I describe the person and they say, yeah, that was my dad, etc., you know.
What about before some sort of great calamity, like say 9/11 for example, where a lot of people talk about anything like that you want to use, but you know that people can suddenly be wow, like you know, there's all this information.
I don't think I've told anyone the story. I don't know if I even think I've told Vic, but the day before, remember there used to be chat rooms? Okay, you don't hear chat rooms anymore, do you? So I was in a chat room and there was an American. I suddenly became very angry and I started saying things on it like there'd be blood in the streets, etc. 24 hours was September 11th, etc. Normally I don't have those sort of experiences.
The world disaster stuff.
No. Occasionally I have said things to Vic, or I felt like an earthquake, and within hours there's an earthquake somewhere, etc. But that's not every earthquake that ever happens.
Yeah.
You know? Occasionally I'm sitting and I in my lounge room, and if Vic's not there, I suddenly look out the window and go, something's wrong, but I can't put my finger on it.
Yeah.
One day, I think Vic for some reason had gone down the Gold Coast. It was a Friday. I had a couple of scotches, sitting watching the TV. I knew I didn't have to go pick up Vic because she'd gone down the Gold Coast. I think it was for girlies' night or something. She doesn't do that very often, but she did. And I suddenly sat up and went, there's something wrong. And I can feel it, I don't know where it is. Well, if I can't work out what it is, I might as well relax. So I relaxed. The phone went. Picked up the phone, it's my daughter. She had a car accident around the corner.
Oh.
Okay. Remember that accident? Okay. The good thing was I didn't have to drive because I could walk down. I had 2 or 3 scratches.
You can walk down the road and rescue her instead of drive down.
She was okay, by the way.
Yeah,
Oh,
she was
that's
fine.
good.
Oh yeah. This guy had been on drugs or something and ran up the back of her. Vic's mum had said about 2 months earlier that there would be a new car in the house, and because of that car accident, my daughter ended up buying a new car. There was one. This wasn't anger; it was pain. I was up at the Paddington Hotel in the drive-through. The guy I was with was going to buy some alcohol, and I suddenly had a pain in my mouth. And I went, this is not mine. I looked at him and said, do you get a pain in the side of in your teeth? And he said, yes, I've just had it, etc. Any room you walk into, you like to have a feeling. Most people have a feeling when they walk into a room. Okay. You can change the feeling by adding music, etc. Some places, no matter what you do, you'll never change the feeling. Okay. Friends of ours just moved up the Sunshine Coast. They actually owned the house but had been renting it out. The people they were renting it to were druggos. Okay. The first time we went up there was the first weekend they had moved back up there, and it felt horrible. The only place in the house that I felt comfortable was out on the pergola. Okay. The second time we went up, and Vic can verify this, we went to the side door was open, I was hardly through the door, and I went, it feels so much better. And it did. The whole place, they had, not specifically that room, but other rooms they had painted, sealed it to try and stop the smell of marijuana, etc. But it had a different feeling, and it had a completely different feeling. And in 6 weeks, the change had occurred. Okay. They actually had a drug den where they never opened the windows. Yeah, haven't you heard of that before? If you're renting a house, apparently that's not uncommon, and you can actually buy paint to paint over your walls to stop the smell of the marijuana coming out through it. So, yeah. I did a reading for a lady, and I suddenly branched off onto a son, and then I branched off onto the son's friend, and the boys were 10 at the time, and I said to the woman, this boy will not get to 21. She came back and saw me 10, 11 years, or 11, 12 years later, and the boy got killed in a car accident 3 months before he turned 21. So again, that comes from that free will versus destiny sort of concept. How can they know things so far ahead in time, and on the same breath, which is different from the way we think, they don't necessarily always want to stop these things from happening. So there must be a purpose in this boy dying, because they could have said car accident, they could have said going off the side of the road, hitting some dirt and the car rolling, but they didn't. So I often say their thinking is frequently different from ours, because we associate to these bodies as being the all-important thing. Okay. I have to let it go through. In that case, the person who was told to wasn't directly emotionally connected to the person who died. Okay. The other point here, as in the case of my mother, Sheryl Lehman, who probably none of you have heard of, okay, she goes back far too far. Okay. A year before my mother died, actually gave the actual month, okay, of my mother's death. I actually want to know that. So you weren't going to traumatise me by having that information. If they tell me I shouldn't say something or hold something back, I may do that, but then they probably won't tell me that in the first place. Okay? And the point is, what would traumatise one person won't at all disturb another person. Okay.
And maybe if what the person's going to die of could be prevented.
That's happened.
That's another thing too.
That's happened. I had
That's
a
probably when I was going
one
to
thing-
warning.
to
Yeah.
I had this was back when we were in Oldfield Road in Simon Park, and it was associated to one family. And in a reading, I mentioned this woman's brother and the cancer on his arm. Okay. And they were blissfully unaware of the cancer. Anyway, they said, well, everything else was right, so we'll take him to a doctor. And he had melanoma. Okay. And yes, there was a spot there, but it was right through his arm. And he survived it, okay, because I said something, but the doctors also said if it had been left another month or not, he would have not survived. Okay. So that one bit of information. Now, in the same family, I had said something about this woman having a heart attack. So they went off, had it checked, okay, which stopped the heart attack. I had a client more recently from Laidley. I did it through Messenger, okay, and I've known this family for over 30 years, okay. And I mentioned about someone having a heart attack and surviving. 24 hours after that, she had a heart attack in hospital. If it wasn't for the son who was there to alert the nurses, she would have died, but she survived it. Okay, so 24 hours beforehand, the information was there. Okay, I don't know how I can censor the information I can get, because what will upset you won't upset you, and vice versa. I can't do that. If I get told that this person's oversensitive, so there. But it may also come into why they won't talk to certain people. Way back in my 20s, I was supposed to do this reading for this woman. Spirit was really strong. I could feel them really well. But what they said to me was, if you start doing this reading, you're going to pick up on one of her past lives, and that will destroy her. And you need to stop now. And I thought, well, what a strange thing to say. But I said that to her, and she said, oh, that's amazing. I saw an astrologer the other week who said exactly the same thing. So all I can do was take what was said. And like I said, you don't know what's going to upset one person. And from their standpoint too, they may want you to be upset over something. Okay. Which may again sound strange from our standpoint. Okay, like I said, it's a hard question. I can only say what I hear. Okay.
Go ahead. Oh, sorry.
How you take it is pretty much up to you. Okay. I was told by Van James. Does anybody know Van James?
Yep.
Interesting woman. She would say things that make no sense, but when it happened, it would be word for word. Okay. She told me about having an operation. So I went, oh, bugger, I'm not having an operation. I'm going to the gym. I'm going to get fit. Rah, 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 rah. Which I did. It ended up being a nasal operation. It had nothing to do with going to the gym. Okay.
The other thing is, if information comes through, for example, say someone's ill and they don't know it.
That's
Right,
happened.
yeah. They come to you, they have a reading, they may be going to die, but you might tell them that, and they just turn a path, not necessarily to healing, but a path of a different experience before they die.
That's right.
The other thing,
That brings in two different stories. One is a lady who lives around here. Her husband had passed away. She came for a reading, and he said to me to say to her, small operation up here. No sign, no visual sign of anything wrong. Went to the doctor, said to the doctor, I've been told there's a problem up here. The doctor found a small lump, a cancerous lump, got it removed. She's still alive today. Now, the other story, which is not from me doing a reading, okay. We know this chap who lived out at Brookfield, I think Brookfield Way, out that way at the time. He had a liking for standing outside looking at the stars. You know, one night his wife came out and he was crying. And she said, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" A light came down across the top of me and told that I had 3 years to live. 3 years to live. Okay, now this guy was fairly well off. Okay. What he decided to do was cash in his super. He took his wife and kids around the world, came back 3 years later, almost to the day. He had a brain hemorrhage somewhere at the back here, okay, and he died. And it was pretty much close to the day, if my memory serves me right. Vic's nodding head up and down.
And he was a man of science. He was a doctor.
Yeah.
So he really didn't go for all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
It was so intense.
Yeah.
The light just come and wrapped around him, he said.
Wow.
Yeah.
And he felt okay.
Yeah.
He believed it.
Yeah.
So he,
Okay, the other part, which is more my part, is it Witter Road, that where the cemetery is? Out that way?
Witter?
Witter?
Don't
oh,
know.
Wacol.
Wacol.
Oh,
right,
yeah.
The cemetery there. We're driving back from my son's place and I look over and I go, I don't want to go to another funeral there because a year beforehand we had gone to one. Got around the corner, past the service station on Summers Road, get a phone call off her daughter and we're told, and she was telling us that this chap died and that's where they had the service. So he used the information to his best advantage, okay, for his kids, all that sort of stuff. So
Yeah.
if you were to tell me I was going to die next week, watch me run the insurance company and I'm going to put in a $2 million insurance policy, okay, I would do that. Okay, so I'm not against that. So, you know, how much information should you give a client? If I hold back on information, then the information is likely to stop until, and especially if they want to force the information, they'll keep repeating it until I've just got to say something. You know,
Facing our own mortality.
Yeah.
it's
We're all going to die.
Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah, it just depends when.
That's right.
So I'll see all you guys on the other side.
and don't come back and talk to me.
For you know what? The on planet Earth meeting. We'll have just as much fun there.
Every month.
Every month. Well, who knows about months over there, but yeah. Sorry.
It sounds quite nice over there. Actually. It does. If you're free enough to let go, I think that it sounds. Yeah, it sounds nice.
So why did we come here?
I don't know.
Good question, Vic. Put him on the spot.
Yeah.
Get him back for that
The only
story.
good thing I can see was meeting you.
Good one. Good one.
You know what her nickname is?
What?
Goddess. Well, you know, you think of the poor baby who comes through a mother who's been on heroin for 10 years and,
Yeah.
you know, all that sort of stuff, and they've got no hope in hell of having what could be regarded as a decent life.
Yeah.
Or the person who, and this, I've seen this quite a few times, no matter what they do, their life sucks. It's also the theory.
But there's another theory. Oh, hang on, Basil. Go on.
I've been putting all this together. You know. I've
Sitting
been
back.
putting a bit of music together, right? I'm no muso, I can't read music, but I've got a keen ear for it. So I created this bit of music and I play it over and over again until it tells me what the name of the track is, right? And I get the feeling what I call the track. And I call one recently the meeting place. Okay, the meeting place, and now I've got to get a cover. I want to get a cover for this. So I chose the space book at Planet Earth, the meeting place. Yeah, so what if this planet has been populated from all these different cultures so that we can learn to associate ourselves with all different views of life, and this is the meeting place.
Very good. That's not bad.
Which then makes no sense if everything's preordained.
If it's preordained.
Yeah.
If it's preordained. Yeah.
But there's the other idea that we are just aspects of the creative force reaching out to have experience through us, which then goes back to the source.
Yeah.
So it can, whatever it does with
You can
that.
imagine how
That's another idea.
buzzing to that external force. This planet's just buzzing with life, you know, like
Yeah.
in the air, on the ground, under the oceans,
Yeah.
underground, everywhere. It's just humming with life, you know.
Or you could take it more from the Buddhist sort of concept, just breathe, it is what it is, just
Yes.
breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Which is probably the better way of approaching it. We can ask these questions, and unless we had a deep trance medium who was evolved enough to come and tell us, but even with, it's like silver birch and white eagle, etc., etc., even the time period when those spirit people came through their mediums, was things not said so people at that time could understand. It's like the Akashic records. You all heard of Akashic records. The original versions of that was this cosmic library where all information was kept. We've got computers now. Is it now a cosmic computer? Okay. They will put things into words, into images in my head that I can relate to. Okay, and the reality could still be quite a bit different. You know.
I have a question for you. Who do you think they are?
You.
Well, the best way I can describe it for me, the they that I generally talk about, with other people talk about like spirit guides, etc. I usually describe it to clients as I've got a number of people who will be with me, who help me with the session, and then when you walk in the room you bring your deceased family who may go back 3 or 4 generations, or friends or family, etc., etc. That's still very much in making it as individuals and spirits. There's also, I've experienced once, a connectedness to a knowing that knew all things at the same time I knew nothing, which was amazing. And I mean, that's the only way I can describe it. I've also had an experience when I was meditating where I slipped into a place where I always had been and always will be, and it felt like eternity. I was in there, and as soon as I thought, I came out of it, and then I literally came out and looked at the clock and it was only 5 minutes. But while I was in that space, I was always there. And I suspect we are always in that space. For some reason, these bodies block that connection. And when I meditate, and sometimes I describe it, what I want to connect to is the consciousness behind the consciousness. Okay, because it's like everything almost seems to have consciousness. You've got a consciousness, okay, but there's multiple aspects of that consciousness. Okay, it's almost every one of us can suggest that we have different little voices in us. Okay, and the voice I want to connect to is a voice that's not necessarily really me anyway, and yet it has to be sort of, I'm still part of it. How do you describe any of that stuff? You can't. You can't describe that space where I was there forever, etc., where it was, I could use the word was all loving, but it doesn't even come close to it. Love is a bad word to that. Okay, it's primitive. Okay. Unless you've had that experience, you don't actually, you probably can't relate to it.
It's a satori. Satori.
I'll take your word for it. I've never heard that word before.
Yeah.
Samadhi.
That's one word.
Yeah, it's one of the words for
Yeah. And words don't really suit true spirituality. True. I have a problem in saying spirituality these days because I've seen too many people use it as a weapon.
But do you know that it says in the Bible, I'll just give you this little bit of tidbit, it says speaking to the dead was a capital offence, punishable by stoning under Old Testament law. And in Leviticus 20:27 it states, men and women among you who act as mediums or psychics must be put to death by stoning. They are guilty of a capital
Which version
offence.
of the Bible was that?
Oh, I don't know.
The Torah.
Okay. King James Version. King James Version, why was it called King James Version? King James had a cousin who was in line of the throne who was herbalist. So he changed the Bible so he could condemn his second cousin or something, etc. You have to question, okay, the Bible itself, the New Testament especially, was written, from what I can gather, in the 3rd and 6th centuries by politicians, emperors and politicians of the time. Okay. If you're going to follow the Bible, then you have to also research the history of it. And once you start researching the history of it brings a lot of questions into play. The thing with Christian revival groups, they will take a piece of that Bible, of the Bible, and add it to that to justify their position on things. Whoever said that the Bible was written by God, no, it wasn't. It was written by politicians. I think one of the fundamental problems that spiritualism has had, and it's certainly apparently even in some of the old written documents of meetings of the Bound Street Spiritualist Church, the biggest problem is getting decent clairvoyants.
But anyway, we have to wind it up because we've got a bit over time.
Oh, what's wrong with that? What's time?
But thank you so much. I found it really interesting, and I hope everybody else did too. So thank you.